Hi, my name is Mick Rankin, and this is Conservative Chat. I'll bring the issues of the day, give them a good common sense discussion. I believe we get emotional about a lot of issues, and if we look at the whole picture, we can digest the various points, find where truth overcomes emotion, and bring some sanity to our discussions. Please feel free to comment. I will read all of them. I won't respond to personal attacks, but I will try to reply to every real concern, sometimes individually, sometimes as a group, or on the next podcast. We may not agree, but we can at least agree to disagree. So today's podcast, I will discuss voting, campaigns, and messaging. If that sounds familiar, I discussed on previous podcast how words matter. This brings it to the next level. So for today, I'll talk about how voting is important. It's not just a right, it's a civic duty, and the history of voting nationally and locally, how campaigns promote candidates, and what is the message, what you hear, what you see, and what you feel. So let's get into it. We hear people say all the time, oh, my vote doesn't count, or it doesn't matter if I vote, it won't make a difference. Well, voting is important. From 1900 to 2020, the average voter turnout for presidential elections was about 60%. In 2020, turnout went up to 68%, which is a great improvement. And out of 336 million citizens, every 1% gain is another 3.36 million votes. Biden beat Trump by 7 million votes. Think about that. 32% of the voting public stayed home. Had 3% more voters turned out, that would have added another 10 million votes and changed the outcome of the 2020 presidency. Either a bigger win for Biden or a different president, President Trump. In Georgia, the special Senate race that pitted Raphael Warnock against Herschel Walker, early voting mattered. Warnock was ahead 320,000 votes going into Election Day. His campaign knew how many they needed to turn out on Election Day to win. On Election Day, Walker won by 225,000 votes, but could not overcome the 85,000 vote difference. Now let's talk about voter participation. The runoff had less than 90% of the previous election turnout. That means 10% stayed home and mostly were Republicans. Had the other 10% turned out on the election, it would have changed the election, added another 350,000 votes, and Walker most likely would have won. Warnock didn't win, Walker lost, and Republicans lost it for him. So let's talk about Wilson, North Carolina elections. There are 55,693 registered voters in Wilson County as of 1 January 2024. And the three largest voting groups are Democrats, 46%, unaffiliated voters at 28.5%, and Republican at about 25%. The early vote has consistently been about 60% of the election total vote. So early voting matters. When people vote early, we can tell where to concentrate phone calls and visits on election day to get more voters out. The voter turnout in the last two elections has been about 47%. Think about that. Half of registered voters stayed home. That is in spite of 2 weeks of early voting, including weekends, and the ability to request and mail in a ballot. If anyone complains that a photo ID prevented anyone from voting, they're outright lying. Everyone can vote, even without an ID, with a provisional ballot. And the Board of Elections office can issue an ID even during voting. There is no excuse for anyone not to vote. So, my message is clear. Your vote matters. It is the total number of voters getting out that makes the difference. Every voter makes a difference. So now let's talk about campaigns and how they promote their candidate. They offer basically two ways of campaign messaging. Either vote for the candidate or vote against the opponent. Promoting the candidate's position, policy, plans, and record offers who the candidate is, specific ideals, concrete solutions, how things have been accomplished, and what to expect from the candidate. Attacking the opposition offers a missed opportunity to promote the candidate, offers no specific plans or ideas or solutions to issues or problems, and says nothing about why the candidate should be elected. Just don't vote for the other guy. And that leads me to messaging and why words matter. When campaigns attack their opponent, they're creating emotion and fear. Have you heard some of these terms? The world will end due to climate change. Climate change is more of a threat than nuclear war. The loss of democracy if Republicans win. Christian nationalism is a threat to democracy. Republicans want to end Social Security. If Trump wins, we'll have a dictatorship. And you know, Trump is friends with Putin. If Trump wins, there'll be retribution and political violence against opponents. Trump says if he doesn't win, there will be a bloodbath. The January 6th, let's talk about the scare tactics, reality versus what you hear. The actions on the Capitol started before the president's speech even ended. There were no weapons. The only death that day was Ashley Babbitt, a protester. And President Trump asked for National Guard days before, and it was refused by the Speaker of the House and the Mayor of D.C. All of these things are designed to create fear, make people question their choices for president, cause people to stay home and not vote, and create a defeatist attitude towards the future. Think about it. These phrases predict what the opposition is going to do if elected. There's no connection to past performance or actions. No solution or plan is offered. The only option is elect Democrats or the future is lost. So it's time to stand up to that fear mongering. And I want to quote a famous Democrat, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Use your vote. Don't give it away by staying home. Elect candidates who offer solutions, who tell you their plans, who do not try to scare you into voting for them. And when you hear allegations against a candidate, research it. Determine the context and the time frame. Don't accept someone said or I heard. Always ask, okay, who said it? Or where did you hear it? What's the reference to the source? Look at past performance. When President Trump was in office, did he prosecute his opponents? For all the campaign rally chants of lock her up, there was never any action to do so while he was president. Did he become a dictator? He turned over power. And did he do things bad? Did he do the bad things his opposition said he was going to do? So, when political messages are broadcast, look at what they are designed to do. Do they create fear? Do they cause voters to vote against something or someone? Do they send images that are superimposed on negative pictures to create a negative appearance? Do they display videos that are edited rather than the entirety? Do they provide false or misleading information that's out of context, out of date, incorrect names or places, no references, witnesses or sources, or only partial quotes, pictures and videos, etc.? And I want to say this, be careful of the democracy claims. True democracies include China, Russia, and North Korea. They have a single party that controls everything, and it is always about the greater good for society or the country. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic where individual rights are paramount. Greater good is taken into account, but the individual right is always protected. So here's my take. Voting is important. It is not a right, it is a civic duty. History shows voting is a lack of interest and apathy. We need to fix that. We need to do better and not give away our votes. Our votes count when we all vote. We can make a difference. Campaigns who promote candidates by attacking their opponents miss an opportunity to tell us the good things about themselves, or they really don't have anything good to tell us about themselves. They try to create fear rather than solutions, and they don't give us any plans or policy. So what is the message? Is it positive for the future, or does it create fear? Are the images used real or created to look bad? Is it designed to inspire you to want to vote for the candidate or vote against the opposition? Ask yourself, why would you vote against something rather than for something? Doesn't voting against something really mean not much change? Are you better off now than before the last election? If the answer is no, maybe it is time for a change. Well, that's all for this podcast. Let me know what you think. If you like it, please subscribe. So you get the latest podcast as I post it. Please share with your friends and family and ask them to subscribe too. This is Mick Rankin signing off.